Okay, so let's move on into types of variable. Okay, so before we go into this, just a quick recap. What is a variable? Variable is a location where we store data. Okay, so whenever we want to store data, we use a variable. So we name our variable, right? Okay, so there are actually two types of variable which we can use. We have a local variable and a global variable. Just from its name, we can know the difference. Local is actually a variable that we use where we declare inside a function. Again, I repeat, okay, a local variable is declared inside a function. For example, if you see your function, inside your function you have declaration, meaning that the variables that was declared inside your function can only be used by that function. It cannot be used by other functions. Okay, so this type of variable can only be used by the function that declared it. So this is a local variable, meaning that it is declared locally by that function. So if it's declared locally, other functions cannot use the variables that's inside that function. Okay, so if you want to check whether that variable is local or global, you check where it is declared. If it's declared inside a function, then it is a local variable. Okay, but if the variable is declared outside of all function, it is called a global variable. Okay, a global variable is a variable that is declared outside of all functions, meaning that if we declare it outside of all functions, meaning that variables can be used by all functions that were created inside the program. Okay, so the function will share the same variable, which are the global variable. Okay, although it may seem easier to declare all variable outside, okay, but do not do that. This is not a recommended way, because your program readability can be compromised, so your maintenance can be tedious. The concept is like this. Let's say I have a pen. Okay, let's say I'm holding a pen. Okay, if I put this pen on this table, okay, and everyone in this room, okay, imagine this pen is a global variable since I declare it outside. Okay, so I put it on the table, so meaning that this pen that I declared outside, every single person in this room can use the pen. That person can use this pen, that person can use this pen. Okay, so since everyone is sharing the same variable, the data can be jumbled up. Okay, since everyone is using it. Okay, so it's hard for you to keep track of what is actually inside that variable. Okay, so that's why we don't recommend for you to use a global variable. Instead, use a local variable. Let's say I have a pen and this pen is only mine, so I know this is a local variable. Since this pen is mine, I know where it goes. Okay, so that person has their own pen, that person has their own pen. Okay, so if it is declared locally, it is a local variable. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so I'll show you an example so that you can understand this better. Alright, so let's take a look at this example right here. Okay, so the question says, for each program, determine whether the variable number is a local variable or a global variable. Alright, so like I've said, a local variable is where the variable is declared locally, meaning that it is declared inside a function, whereas a global variable will be declared outside of all functions. Alright, so let's take a look at this first program right here. Alright, so if you take a look here, there are two functions. We have a main function and we also have a negative function. Okay, so if you take a look at this main, we have a number. Okay, inside this negative function, we also have a number. Alright, so this number that is declared inside main, alright, this variable, okay, is it a local variable or is it a global variable? Okay, the answer, it is a local variable. Why we say this is a local variable? Because take a look at where it is declared. It is declared inside the function. Right now it is declared inside main. Alright, so if you take a look here as well, okay, this variable, this parameter number, okay, it is also declared within this function. So this is also a local variable, but this is a parameter. Okay, so for this program right here, we also have number. okay, this variable number, and inside this function negative also have a number. But let's take a look where this variable number is declared. It is declared outside. Okay, so since this is a function, this is a function, so this variable number is declared outside of all function, so we know that this is a global variable. Okay, so the difference between the two, global variable is declared outside of all function, local variable is declared inside a function. Okay, so this, what's the difference between local and global variable? All right, local variable, when it is declared inside this function, only this function can use this variable. Okay, and then this negative function also have its own variable called number. Okay, whereas for this one, since this is a global variable, all right, all functions can use this variable. So that's the difference between the two. So if we take a look at this next question, you will understand this a bit better. All right, for each program, what would be the output displayed on the screen if the user input is false? So let's take a look at this program right here, the first one. All right, so whenever we run a program that have functions in it, take a look at the main function first. Okay, don't take a look at the other functions yet. All right, so if you take a look, the first line here is int number, meaning that we are declaring the number. All right, the variable called number. All right, so this is inside main. All right, and we also have another function called negative, so we'll do that later when it is called. All right, so C out, enter a number. So C in number. So since the question said the user input would be 4, so it will store number 4. Okay, then it goes here, negative number. So meaning that this is a function call. All right, now this, okay, is a parameter. So this, what value is inside there? All right, this value inside here, which is 4. So meaning that this value will be sent to this parameter called number as well. All right, so meaning that when it is called, we have another function called negative. All right, this function negative also have its own variable called number. So since 4 is transferred here, so meaning that this parameter will also receive 4. Okay, so then it goes inside number equals to negative number, meaning that it wants to make this as a negative number, so number equals to negative 4. All right, so then it will return the number, so meaning that it will return back to the person that calls it here. All right, so it will receive negative 4. Okay, now since we have finished this, okay, we go on to the next line, C out, the number is now, so this would be our output. Okay, the number is now. Now, what would be the value displayed here? Do you think, is it negative 4 or is it 4? Okay, the answer is 4. Why do we say that? Okay, why is the answer not negative 4? Okay, the output would be the number is now 4. Why is it not negative 4? Now take a look here. All right, when we send this number, this value 4, which is the input, right? When we send it here, this parameter receives it. Okay, then it will make this, it will update the value inside this function as negative 4, and it will return negative 4 back to this function. Now since it returns this number, okay, but take a look here, it is not receiving it. If you have equals and you write here number equals to negative number, meaning that the negative 4 that was sent here will be stored inside number, then will the output be the number is now negative 4 because it is updated. But because we don't have this, okay, we only have this, so when it returns, it does not receive it. So that's why the output is the number is now, okay, instead of it being negative 4, the answer would be the number is now 4. All right, so that is why when we return something, it is important for us to receive and store the data. All right. All right, moving on to the next program. All right, so we know, of course, with this program we also have two functions, but if you take a look at the top here, all right, we have a global variable, meaning that this variable is declared outside of all functions. So we have here a global variable. Okay, so what is our global variable? Which is number. Okay, so number is declared outside, meaning that all functions inside this program can use this variable number. Alright, so when we click on execute, it will of course execute the main function first. Alright, so take a look here. So we have main. Okay, so inside main we have cout, enter a number, cin number. Now, since we don't have a declaration inside this main function, alright, we don't need to declare it inside here. Alright, because the number is declared outside, which is a global variable. So when the input is stored as 4, okay, so the global variable number will be updated. Okay, because meaning that the main will be able to use this variable automatically because it is stored outside. Okay, not stored, declared outside. All right, so after that we have stored 4. Okay, we call the function negative. All right, if you take a look here, it is an empty parameter. Why is it empty? Why does this one have a parameter? Because this, okay, this earlier, the function earlier, okay, it declared its variable inside. Because it declares its variable inside, this function cannot access this variable. Okay, if it wants to access this variable, okay, it needs to send the value that is inside to this function. All right, with this program, because the number here is a global variable, meaning that all function can use it. Okay, so since everyone can use this variable, there's no need for us to send any value back to this function. You get what I mean? You get what I mean? Okay, so when we call it, okay, we just call it. All right, then number equals to negative number, because we know that number is 4. All right, so automatically this will be updated to negative 4. All right, so the negative function will also be empty because there's no variable inside there. So this two function uses this global variable. It will be automatically updated because everyone can access it. All right, so cout. So since we've done that, all right, cout, the number is now, so the output would be the number is now. Okay, number. So since this is a global variable, it will automatically take it here. So the answer is the number is now negative 4. All right, so that is the difference between a global variable and a local variable. Keep in mind, do not use a global variable, always use a local variable. All right. Okay, so let's go into parameters. Okay, so parameter is a container that will hold a value that will be passed and received by the function. Okay, so as we all know, whenever we have functions, we use parameters. So parameters are used to pass data across functions. Okay, let's say you have a main function, okay, and then you have another function. In order for us to send the data from this to that, we need to use a parameter. Okay, in order for this to send data to that, then it also needs a parameter. Okay, so meaning that whenever the data are passed between different functions, we use parameters. Okay, there are two types of parameters. We have formal parameters and actual parameters. Okay, formal parameters are parameters that are defined at the function definition. Okay, so these are the parameters, or the values are actually received by the function. So formal parameters are values that are received by the function. So if you take a look at the function definition, okay, the ones where you have inside the bracket, right? Okay, then you have the declaration, okay, double total in number. So the total and number here are parameters. So this type of parameters are called formal parameters. Formal parameters are parameters where they receive the data. Okay, whereas actual parameter is where we transfer or we pass the data to another function. Okay, so actual parameters are used inside a function call. So whenever we want to pass data from this function to this function, we call this parameter an actual parameter. Okay, so we send this to that. This is actual parameter. And the one that receives it is called a formal parameter. Okay, again I repeat, actual parameter is the one that we send, formal parameter is the one that we receive. Okay, so whenever we pass values between functions, there are a few ways for you to do this. Okay, the first way is we pass value through parameters. So this is parameter passing by value. So let's say you want to give data from this function to this function, we use parameters, right? Okay, so what they're sending is they're sending values, they're sending data. All right, another way for us to send data from function to function is by using a return value. Let's say we use function with a return value. Okay, so we call that function. So whenever this function is called, it will be executed. Towards the end, it will have a return value. So this return value, it will send back to the person that calls it. So this is how another way for us to send data. Okay, the last way is by using pass by reference parameters. Okay, so parameter passed by reference is actually location of the value or pass between functions through parameters. So this is a bit different than function with pass by value, because whenever we pass data using parameters passed by value, we are just sending the value to that function. Okay, if we use parameter passed by reference, we're not sending just the data, we're sending the location as well, meaning that we're kind of sending the parameter, the variable itself, to this function, so that this function can just automatically update the data back to the person that calls it. Okay, you will understand this better the more you see this. Okay, so this since we're using function pass by reference, okay, we're going into our last type of function, which is function with pass by reference. Okay, so this type of function uses a reference parameters. So whenever you see a function that has an ampersand, for example right here, okay, you see an ampersand, meaning that this parameter is known as a pass by reference parameter. Okay, in this example here, you notice that this function, okay, from this function definition, we have int num1, int num2, and int and total. Okay, num1 and num2 is passed by value, meaning that these two parameters receives value only. Okay, it receives num1 and it receives num2, meaning it receives data as num1 and data as num2 inside num1 and num2. Whereas if you see a parameter that has an ampersand, for example this total right here, this is known as function with pass by reference. Okay, this is a reference parameter. So total is a reference parameter, num1 and num2 is parameter by value. Okay, so what's the difference between the two? Num1 and num2 can only receive value, whereas the total here can actually update the parameter. So if you notice inside this reference parameter, we don't have a return value. Why? Because the answer that we calculate, okay, by this total will automatically be updated inside this total. Okay, so inside the function call, okay, whenever we call this function, okay, if we calculate the total will automatically update here. Once it has been stored, data has been stored, it will automatically be updated inside total. So if the parameter that's inside the function call will also be updated there as well, because it is linked. Okay, the reference parameters are linked from one place to another, so they are automatically updated. So the content inside the variable will be changed automatically. All right, so at function declaration, the return type is usually used is void, because we don't have a return value here. You don't need a return value when you have pass by reference, because we can just send the data through the reference parameter. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a very simple example so that you can understand how function with pass by reference work. All right, so imagine this is you. Okay, this is just like our previous example where we have you, and let's say you have your brother, okay, whose name is Bob. all right, and you are like the main function here, okay, since you're the leader. All right, so let's say on this table right here, okay, you want a piece of toast on that. All right, you want to have a piece of toast served on the table. All right, so instead of you doing the toast yourself, so you ask Bob to do it for you, because Bob knows how to make the toast. For example, let's say this is the function definition, so Bob knows how to make the toast. Okay, so in order for Bob to make the toast, there are some things that Bob need. Maybe Bob needs bread, okay, and Bob needs let's say jam. Okay, so with function with return value, okay, previously we've done that Bob takes the bread, takes the jam, okay, and then he will do the toast, and in the end it will return the toast to you, right? If you call Bob, let's say I call Bob, okay, Bob needs a bread and he needs a jam. Okay, so if I call Bob, okay, and then I will give Bob the bread and I will also give Bob the jam. All right, so Bob will receive the bread and the jam, he will do the toast, and he will return the toast back to you. All right, so this is function with a return value. Now right now we're talking about function with pass by reference. Function with pass by reference, it was a little bit different. Okay, it has that ampersand if you take a look there. All right, so with function with pass by reference, you don't need to have a return value at the bottom. Why? Because what you're doing here is, okay, so let's say instead of I just give bread and jam, I will give to Bob also the plate. Okay, so instead of I'm just giving the bread and jam, I'm also giving the plate to Bob. All right, so I will give the bread, so Bob will receive bread and Bob will receive jam, and also I will give the plate to Bob. All right, so I will make this as the reference parameter because it has the ampersand. Okay, this is just an example. So what reference parameter does is, okay, it will give like a container, the location, to Bob. So let's say Bob takes the bread and he takes the jam, so Bob has done the toast. Okay, Bob has done the toast. So if Bob wants to give the toast back to the main program, it will save it onto the plate. So it will go plate equals to toast, meaning that the toast will be stored inside plate. So when the toast is stored inside plate, automatically the plate will have a value here, which is the toast. Okay, so since this is a parameter with pass by reference, okay, automatically, all right, the plate here at your side, at the main side, will also be automatically updated. Suddenly, okay, you kind of see, oh, Bob has placed a toast on that, so I received the toast, so that I can just place it here. Okay, see out, for example. Okay, if you take a look at bread and jam here, bread and jam is regular parameter, meaning that it's a parameter with pass by value. All right, so with pass by value, all right, it just gives the bread and it just gives the jam. So he will receive the bread and he will receive the jam. All right, but with the bread and jam, it cannot be updated automatically because it is not a reference parameter. The one with reference parameter will be updated automatically. Okay, as soon as there's something that is stored inside there, it will automatically be updated, so this person will automatically receive it. So that's how function with pass by reference work. Alright, not all parameters needs to have a reference parameter. You can mix some with values and some with reference parameter. Okay, but just keep in mind, if you want to the function to automatically send the value back to you, then you can use a reference parameter. Okay. Okay, so now let's take a look at this example right here. All right, what is the output of the following programs? So we have two different programs. Okay, this program, if you take a look here, let's analyze the function that it uses. This function has a return value, whereas this function doesn't have a return value, but it has reference parameter. Okay, so I'm going to show you the difference between the two, how it works. Okay, so let's take a look at the first one, function with a return value. Okay, if you take a look at the parameter, there's no reference parameter, whereas this one, it doesn't have a return, but it has a reference parameter. Okay, so let's try and trace the first one here first. Okay, so let's go to main. Okay, so when we execute, we take a look at the main first. All right, so enter first number. So you have a variable called number1, number2, and also sum. Okay, so let's say enter first number, in number1. So let's say I input 2, and second number, let's say I input 5. All right, so moving on to the next line, sum equals to calculate total number1, number2. So we know that number1 stores 2. Okay, and number 2 stores 5. All right, so it calls this function called calculate total. So it goes to here. So number 1 relates to number 2. So this one is 2. So this is parameter with passed by value, meaning that it doesn't give the parameter back to this person. Instead, it gives the value that is inside the parameter. So it sends 2 to this, 5 to this. So 2 is stored inside num1. That's why I said that the name of the parameters can be different if you want, because it is sending the value, not the actual parameter. All right, so let's say we have, okay, now we have a function called calculate total. All right, so it has variable num1 and also num2. Okay, so num2 receives 2 inside there, so there's 2, and inside num2 we receive 5 here. Okay, so int total, okay, so it declares total there. Okay, total equals to num1 plus num2, so meaning that 2 plus 5 is 7. So return total, meaning that it will return 7 back to here. Okay, so it stores 7 inside sum. So sum will now be 7. So in the end, the output is the sum is 7. Okay, and this is how function with return value works. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the next program here, okay, which uses reference parameter. All right, so of course, when it comes to function, read the main function first. Okay, cout, enter first number, in number 1, let's say it enters 2. Okay, enter second number in number 2. Okay, let's say it enters 5, the same thing. All right, so then it calls the function calculate total. Notice that there is no equal sign here. We don't have that, which is this one. It has the equal sign because it has a return value which needs to be stored inside sum, whereas this one doesn't have a return value. That's why you don't need to save anything here. Okay, so it gives the value inside number 1, the value inside number 2, and also an empty sum, because right now sum is empty. If you take a look here, okay, so number 1 relates to here, number 2 relates to here. Okay, and then you also have sum which relates to this. All right, so number 1, it has 2, number 2, it has 5. So number 1, so it has 2 here, then it has 5 here. Okay, so num1 2, num2 5, and then total. Notice that this is an ampersand, meaning that this is a reference parameter. If it's a reference parameter, this thing will be automatically updated. Okay, you can kind of see it goes two ways here. All right, so since there's no value in sum, it's not sending anything. All right, it just sends the value, the location back to this. So this one and this one will kind of relate and updates automatically. All right, so since it gives 2, it gives 5, and total. All right, total equals to num1 plus num2. Notice that there's no return value. That's why you put void here. Okay, anything that doesn't have a return, you put void there. All right, so total equals to num1 plus num2, 2 plus 5, which is 7. Since we have stored 7 inside total, right? You will notice that since total is a reference parameter, okay, and because sum relates to total, automatically sum will also be updated to 7. Alright, that's why we don't need to store any value here, because sum is automatically updated according to this reference parameter. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. So in the end, see out the sum is, because sum is automatically updated, you can just display the value. Alright, so that is how function with pass by reference work. Alright, so moving on to this next example, which I'm going to show you so that you can understand this a bit more. Alright, so let's say I give you this program. So what is the output for this program? So we're going to have to trace this program. Okay, if you take a look at this, we have 3 different functions. We have the main function, we have function called summer, we have the function called fall, and also if you take a look up top, okay, here we have a global variable called x, because x is declared outside of all function, meaning that this is a global function. Global variable, sorry. Okay, so the rest is declared inside each of their own functions. Alright, so when we click on execute, alright, so of course we're going to execute the main function first. So let's take a look here. Int num1 equals to 2, meaning that we have a variable called int num1, and then it stores 2, and then int num2 equals to 5, so this stores 5, and then x equals to 6, so meaning that the global variable will store 6. Okay, then you move on to summer. Summer, int num1, int num2. So now let's take a look at this function called summer. So int num1 we have 2, int num2 we have 5, right? So this relates to this, which is a, alright? So this relates to this relates to this, okay? So int a, alright? So we know that if you take a look here, we have an ampersand, so this is a reference parameter. So since this is a reference parameter, okay, it can be automatically updated, the a. Whereas b, it will not be automatically updated because it just passes the value. Alright, so that's the difference between the two. So we know that a is a reference parameter which relates to the int num1. Okay, so these two relates to each other. Okay, so wherever that is changed inside a, int num1 will also be affected. Alright, so int num1, okay, we have a variable called int num1. Alright, int num1 equals to b plus 12. So a stores 2 because it gives 2 here, b stores 5. Alright, then int num1 equals to b plus 12. 5 plus 12 is 17. Alright, so then a equals to 2 times b plus 5, so we do the times first. 2 times b is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15, so this is stored inside a. So a is now changed to 15. Okay, since a is a reference parameter, automatically int num1 will also be updated to 15. Alright, b equals to int num1 plus 4, so int num1 plus 4, 17 plus 4 is 21. Alright, but it's the end of that, so it will go back to the main function since it has finished its job. Alright, so as you can see, int num1 has been updated to 15. Alright, so see out int num1 space, so int num1 we have 15, and then we have space, int num2 is 5, and then we have space, and then we have x is 6. Alright, so this is our first line of output, and then end line. Alright, so let's move on to the next one. Alright, so then after this see out, it moves on to the next function. We have a function called, and it's calling fall. Alright, so fall int num1, int num2. Alright, again, int num1 will give to u, int num2 will give to v. Alright, but take a look here, v is a reference parameter, meaning that this is a reference parameter and it relates to int num2. So int num2 will be affected if v is updated. Okay, so let's take a look here. Int num1, it has been updated to 15, right? So this is 15, this is 5. So u will receive 15, v will receive 5. Okay, and then int num2, we have int num2 equals to x. So int num2 equals to x, since x is 6, so this is 6. Alright. Okay, so let's take a look at the next line. V equals to int num2 times 4. So we have int num2, which is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. So 24 will start inside V. Alright, so V is now updated to 24. Okay, since V is a reference parameter, okay, and it's linked to int num2, so int num2 will now be updated also to 24. Alright, so next, x equals to u minus v. So u is 15 minus v, which is 24. We have negative 9. So negative 9 is stored inside x. So x is updated to negative 9. Alright, so since we have finished that, it goes back to the main function. So we have the next line, which is cout int num1. So since int num1 was 15, so again it uses 15, and then space, and then int num2, since int num2 has been updated 24, so this has become 24, and then we have space, and then we have x, which is negative 9. Alright, so that is the end of the program. So we know that with this program, the output is 15, 5, 6, 15, 24, negative 9. And this is how it works with reference parameter. Okay, anything that is updated here will also be updated to the one that is linked to it. Alright. Now, let's try and do this question. It says that you are asked to write a program that calculates the total and average of two integers. Your program should contain the following functions and main program. So we have, of course, the main program, and we have a function called calculate total and average. Alright, so this function will actually calculate the total and average of the two numbers. Alright, remember that function with a return value, you can only return one value only. Okay, you cannot, when you use function with a return value, you cannot send more than one value. So if we have a function that calculates two things and we want to return two things, which is more than one, right? Back to the person that calls it, we need to use parameter with pass by reference. Okay, because parameter with pass by reference, we can just use the how many parameters that we want, and then it will automatically update those parameters, so we can actually send more than one value instead of only one if we use function with a return value. Okay, so let's try and do this. All right, so when it comes to function, okay, always make sure that when you do your function definition, do it outside of your main program. Okay, so our function is called calculate total and average. Okay, so this function receives two numbers as parameters. So it receives num1 and it also receives num2. Okay, you should also receive the total and average as reference parameter. So instead of just receiving the two numbers which we want to add up, okay, and calculate the average, we also want to receive reference parameter so that we can update these two parameters. All right, so int, when we do reference parameter, int and total, and we also have average, usually this is float. Okay, float and average, so that when we have calculated it, okay, this two will automatically update and gives the value back to the main program. Okay, so we want to calculate the total, so just use the parameter that we have. Total equals to num1 plus num2. Okay, and then we just calculate the average. Okay, equals to total divided by 2.0. Okay, so because total is in integer, okay, since we want it in average, one of it needs to in float, so we need to make one of it into a float. All right, so I'll just do 2.0. Okay, so it will calculate this and it will give it to this total, and then it will calculate the average and it will give to this average, so that we can send two values back to the main program. Okay, all right, so we can just do our main now. All right, so our main program will prompt the user to input two integers. All right, because Why do we ask for the user for the number here? Because we want to give it to the function after this. All right, so cout, enter first number. All right, so cin num1, cout, enter second number. All right, cin num2. All right, so since we have done our input, we need to declare this. So int num1 num2. All right, so when we send the because we want to calculate the total and average now, right? So we don't need to do it ourselves. We can just call this. All right, so if you take a look here, there's something missing here. Okay, we need to have the data type here. Since we don't have a return value, all we need to is just write void. All right, void calculate total and average, and then we have all these parameters. All right, so to call it, we just need to call the name. So calculate total and average, and then we just send our num1 num2. All right, but we also need to send total and average here. All right, so create the variable which we can update and give it back to here. All right, so here we have total. Okay, make sure the data type is the same. So int, this is int, this is int, total is also integer. Float, since we make it float here, the average, since we make it float here, sorry. Okay, so we write here float average. Okay, because again, these two functions are completely different. So this is its own variable, so this is its own variable. All right, so you need to declare for the two. So we have total, and we also have average. Okay, so when we calculate, all right, so let's see, maybe I put 2 here, okay, and then this I put 5. So num1 is 2, all right, so num1 will receive 2, okay, and then num2 will receive 5, okay, and then total and average, we don't have anything here yet. All right, so when we do total equals to num1 plus num2, so this becomes 7. All right, automatically total here will be 7. So since total here will be 7, the total here as well, so this is 2, this is 5, automatically this will be 7 as well. Okay, so then after that, average equals total divided by 2, so 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, I think. All right, so 3.5, so 3.5, automatically this will be added here, and also the average in the main program will also be affected as well, updated. All right, so all we need to do, since we have received 7 and 3.5 here, we can just write cout the total is total, okay, and also the average is average. Okay, so total comes from there, the average comes from there, so the total and average comes from the value from here. Okay, so last thing that we need to do, since we've declared this after the main program, okay, all we need to do is just copy this and put it at the top. Okay, so we don't need all the names, we just need the data type. Okay, alright, lastly, put in the semicolon. Alright, and this is how basically you solve this problem. Alright, so this is how we solve this problem using reference parameter.